You've always been the strong one. So fix this. My father said it like it was a compliment. It wasn't. My sister was sitting at the kitchen table, silent, hands folded in front of her like she was waiting for a decision to be handed down. I hadn't even taken my coat off yet. He called it a family matter. Said there had been an issue at her job. A payment processed too early. A misunderstanding that was getting attention internally. Then he said the number. 6 figures. He said I needed to transfer the money immediately so it could be handled quietly. I was the only one stable enough. Responsible enough. Logical enough. Family protects its own. My sister's voice was small when she said she hadn't meant for it to spiral. He didn't ask if I was involved. He didn't ask what I thought. He said I would take care of it, like it had already been decided. And standing there, still holding my bag, I understood something with unusual clarity. This wasn't about trust. It was about utility. Not because I caused it. Because I was dependable. That was the moment clarity replaced confusion. There's a particular quiet that comes when you recognize a pattern instead of reacting to a moment. If you've ever been the one expected to absorb what you didn't create, you know that quiet. If this resonates with you, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss stories like this. Have you ever been blamed for something simply because you were the most capable person in the room? Have you ever been asked to fix someone else's mistake silently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear if you've been in a similar position. I didn't feel angry. I felt certain. And certainty changes the next move. This wasn't new. My sister had always been described as emotional, sensitive, creative, the kind of person who needed support. I was described as steady. When she overdrafted her first credit card in college, my father paid it off and asked me to help her build a repayment spreadsheet. When she missed rent twice in 1 year, I co-signed the extension because I had the stronger credit history. When she abandoned a certification program halfway through, I was the one asked to call the admissions office and smooth it over. The language was always the same. She's overwhelmed. You're better at this. You understand systems. Which was true. I built my career in compliance, regulatory review, risk mitigation. I understood documentation, liability, audit trails. I understood that intent doesn't erase exposure. In our family, capability translated into obligation. If something broke, I fixed it. If something was owed, I covered it. If something required explanation, I delivered it. It wasn't presented as favoritism. It was framed as practicality. She can't handle this. You can. Over time, you stop expecting fairness. You start expecting assignment. So when my father said I would transfer the money to contain the issue, I didn't experience shock. I recognized structure. The sister makes the decision. The father minimizes it. The capable daughter absorbs the fallout. There was no shouting because none was needed. Everyone already knew their role, including me. The difference was this time the number wasn't a few $1,000s. It was large enough to trigger federal review thresholds. And that changed the calculus. Once I asked for specifics, the story thinned quickly. My sister worked in vendor account management for a mid-sized logistics company. She had access to payment scheduling software. According to my father, she had advanced payments to a shell vendor to cover a short-term investment, which meant she redirected company funds. The amount wasn't accidental rounding. It crossed 6 figures. The company's internal audit team had flagged irregular sequencing in payment authorizations. Multiple approvals had been logged under her credentials. There was no clerical error. There was intent. My name was not on the account. I did not share credentials. I had never communicated with her employer. I had not received a single dollar. Legally, liability follows authorization and benefit. She had both. The idea behind asking me to transfer money was simple. If the funds were returned quickly, perhaps the company would avoid filing a formal report. But repayment does not erase record. Digital systems timestamp everything. IP addresses, login sequences, approval chains. Wire transfers don't cleanse origin. They create additional trails. If I injected personal funds into an active fraud investigation, I wouldn't be protecting her. I would be entangling myself. And that was not a misunderstanding. That was exposure. People expect confrontation in moments like that. But arguing invites escalation. Emotion fuels coercion. If I had raised my voice, my father would have matched it with authority. If I had accused my sister, she would have shifted to tears. If I had defended myself emotionally, the conversation would have reframed into loyalty. They weren't asking. They were assigning. That distinction matters. When someone assigns you responsibility, they are not inviting discussion. They are testing compliance. Silence disrupts that rhythm. So I didn't debate ethics. I didn't list laws. I didn't accuse anyone of manipulation. I asked for documentation. Exact figures. Official communication. Deadlines. Calm questions flatten emotional leverage. And while they spoke, I stopped thinking about how to help. I started thinking about how to separate. By the next morning, the language shifted. My father called again. This time he mentioned reputation, community perception, extended family. He said investigations ruin lives even when resolved quietly. He said I had savings. He said I didn't have children depending on me. He said I had flexibility. Flexibility was the new word for sacrifice. My sister sent a message saying she was terrified. That she hadn't slept. That she trusted me. Trust, in this case, meant payment. The amount now included projected penalties, legal consultation fees, potential settlement costs. Urgency escalated hourly. We need to move before they file externally. I listened. I asked for copies of correspondence from her employer. There was resistance to that request. We don't need to involve more documents. But documentation was the only thing that mattered. By afternoon, my father implied that refusing would fracture the family. Not angrily. Matter of fact. As your father, I'm telling you this is the right thing. Authority layered over obligation. I understood the structure. If I complied, I would be praised for loyalty. If I refused, I would be labeled detached. The emotional outcome was predetermined. So I removed emotion from my planning. And I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull my own financial records. Bank statements. Investment accounts. Wire history. I confirmed there had been no transfers between my sister and me beyond minor family reimbursements. I downloaded 12 months of transaction logs and saved them to encrypted storage. Then I reviewed our past text threads. I exported them. Timestamped. Archived. Next, I asked my sister, calmly, to forward the audit notice from her employer. She hesitated but eventually sent a partial screenshot. Not the full email. That was telling. I noticed the header referenced intentional misallocation of vendor funds. Not clerical discrepancy. I noticed the compliance officer CCIT legal counsel. I noticed the deadline for response had already passed, which meant this wasn't pre-investigation. It was midstream. I consulted a colleague I trusted, not about family details, but about theoretical liability. Hypothetically, if an uninvolved third party repaid misallocated corporate funds during an active internal investigation, could that create scrutiny? The answer was precise. Yes, especially if the repayment appeared structured. Structured transfers trigger their own review protocols. I documented that conversation. Then I ran a simple risk assessment. If I paid, I lose 6 figures. I risk audit scrutiny. I assume moral responsibility publicly. If I refused, family tension increases. Reputation within family shifts. Legal exposure remains 0. The matrix was uncomplicated. Protection required distance, not negotiation. So I prepared a short written statement. Not emotional, not accusatory, clear. And I booked a consultation with an attorney for myself. Not because I had done anything wrong, because I understood proximity risk. Preparation replaced anxiety. By nightfall, I wasn't confused. I was insulated. I called my father that evening. He answered immediately. I said I had reviewed the documentation. I said I would not be transferring funds. Silence. Then disbelief. He asked if I understood the consequences. I said yes. He asked if I was abandoning my sister. I said no. He asked what he was supposed to tell people. I said that was his decision. No speech. No explanation about federal reporting standards. No lecture about compliance law. Just no. Pressure spiked for approximately 30 seconds. Then it shifted into disappointment. He said he was surprised by me. I said I understood. The refusal was simple. Irreversible. When the call ended, nothing dramatic happened. No door slamming. No crying. Just quiet. And in that quiet, the assignment dissolved. Refusal handled the immediate demand. It didn't address the structure. Staying geographically close meant continued pressure. Surprise visits. Extended discussions. Emotional negotiations disguised as updates. Distance reduces leverage. I had been considering an internal transfer within my firm for months. Different city. Larger compliance division. More autonomy. I reopened the email thread. The position was still available. That night, I replied with acceptance. I began lease transfer paperwork the next morning. I purchased a one-way ticket scheduled 3 weeks out. I didn't announce it. I didn't frame it as escape. It was professional advancement. Which was true. But it was also structural exit. I organized documents into 2 folders. Personal records. Family correspondence. Clarity feels different when it becomes action. Not reactive. Deliberate. Within a week, I learned through brief updates that my sister's employer had escalated the matter formally. There were interviews. There was a forensic accounting review. Legal representation was retained. My father sent messages describing stress, confusion, unfairness. I responded minimally. I hope it resolves clearly. When he implied again that repayment might soften the outcome, I reiterated that I would not be involved financially. The company filed a report. Because internal policy required it. That wasn't personal. It was procedural. Extended relatives began calling. Concerned. Curious. I kept my responses neutral. I'm not involved in the matter. Which was factual. Social discomfort circulated. I observed it like weather from inside a building. Unpleasant. But not penetrating. Consequences unfolded without my intervention. And for the first time in my life, I did not step forward to stabilize the narrative. Distance protects clarity. Not because you stop caring, but because you stop absorbing. The morning of my flight, I packed 1 suitcase and 1 carry-on. I walked through my apartment slowly. No dramatic final look. Just confirmation. Documents secured. Laptop charged. Phone in hand. At the airport, my father called. I let it ring. Then I silenced notifications for the family thread. Not blocked. Silenced. At security, I removed the house key from my keychain. It had been there since I moved out at 18. Symbolic access. I placed it in a small envelope and left it in the outgoing mail slot before boarding. No message attached. The plane lifted without turbulence. Movement felt controlled. Not dramatic. Intentional. People assume walking away is loud. For me, it was administrative. I updated my address. I transferred utilities. I met my new team. In my new office, compliance reviews filled my days. Risk matrices. Policy revisions. Audit simulations. Systems behave predictably when you respect boundaries. So do people. Relief did not arrive as celebration. It arrived as steadiness. No one expected me to absorb what I did not authorize. No one framed my competence as obligation. My sister's case resolved months later through legal channels. There were penalties. There were agreements. There were consequences aligned with record. I was not mentioned. For the first time in my life, I understood that being capable does not require being available. Choosing safety over approval is not abandonment. It is alignment. Family roles can feel inherited, fixed, but roles persist only when performed. I stopped performing mine. There was no announcement. No speech about boundaries. Just absence from the equation. Sometimes justice isn't correction. It's separation. I didn't wire the money. I didn't defend the narrative. I made 1 transfer that night. My career. My address. My proximity. By sunrise, the audit trail wasn't mine. And for the first time in my life, I walked away, with everything still in my name.